Tonight we're in Basingstoke, and welcome to Question Time. A big welcome to all of you in our audience here, the people who ask the questions, to our panel, who don't know what they are until they hear them from your lips. The Conservative Immigration Minister, Mark Harper, Labour's new Shadow Education Secretary, Tristram, promoted in last week's reshuffle, Diane James of UKIP, who got the party's best ever parliamentary result in the Eastleigh by-election, the Daily Telegraph's chief political commentator, Peter Oborne, and the playwright Bonnie Greer, who wrote an opera about appearing on Question Time last time she was here alongside Nick Griffin. So watch out. Thank you. We'll take our first question from Scarlett Russell, please.
Is the government too weak to stand up to the energy companies?
Is the government too weak to stand up to energy companies? We've had, of course, British Gas announcing an over 9% increase in prices today. Peter Oborne.
Yes, I think we know what we're going to get from the panel tonight. We're going to be told that the government should act, that there's a cartel in the energy companies, that there is some sort of illicit skullduggery going on, and somebody's got to keep prices down. This is a return to the illiterate financial arguments, economic arguments of the political class that we used to get in the 1970s and 1980s. I know they're going to say it.
Well, all of them?
I think with a bit of luck we might get some sense from Mr. Harper, but apart from that, we're going to get a load of absolute drivel from the politicians on the panel. Now, the fact is that we have a capitalist system in this country. It depends on supply and demand. And the reason why energy prices are going up is nothing to do, as far as I can see, unless somebody can prove it, with the greed of the energy companies. It's to do with movements in global energy prices, which we're stuck with. So what to do about it? The Labour leader has very wisely and rightly raised the issue. It is something which affects people in their pockets. But what you cannot do is hold prices down. That is an interference with the capitalist system. It won't work. It's state taking over.
So why did you call him brave to do what he did, if you think it's rubbish?
I thought that what he did do in that speech was speak bravely about socialism. I quite admired that. I think that is a role for politicians. What I think we need to do, just to finish off, is look at the structural problems we have. If we really want to deal with high energy prices in this country, there is only one solution. That is getting more supply, and that is fracking on a massive scale throughout Britain.
Okay. Well, Tristram Hunt, you've had your card marked by Peter Oborne. We better have a go.
Well, where I disagree with Peter is that I don't think the capitalist system is working at the moment in the interests of consumers. The market is not working. It's not delivering for people. And we're going to see week after week the big six cartel companies racking up the prices. And for capitalism to really work, you have to interfere. The thing about capitalism is it consolidates power and wealth. And if you want it to work for the majority of the people, then you have to have a hand on the tiller, which is why we have competition law and regulation law. And what we're saying in the Labour Party is that we want to break up the control that the big six have, which is racking up energy prices for families. And it's going to get really bad over the course of this winter. So look, we're saying we're going to introduce a price freeze, and then what Ed Miliband wants to do is to make sure during that price freeze we reform the regulatory market. We reform the system so that we can get prices down for consumers. And just as in the past, we put a tax on utility companies when they overcharged, and just as the Conservative Party in the early 1980s put a tax on North Sea oil because there were excessive profits there, these are the moments when politicians interfere in the market for the good of the public. And we've had all this stuff about the 1970s and Red Ed and all the rest of it. What I think is that Ed Miliband is more in line with Adam Smith, who believed that you need to control the market and manage the market to deliver good results for consumers and a market working properly.
Mark Harper.
Well, what we think you need in the market actually is more competition. and we want more entrants to come into the market. What Tristram says would be more compelling if, when Labour was in power, we hadn't started with 14 energy companies and ended with 6. I mean,
how do you get more to come back in now? What do you do?
First of all, we want more investment in the industry, and we've seen some announcements today. The Chancellor's been overseas, and we're going to have more investment. We need to diversify away from being completely reliant on fossil fuels.
Yeah, but you said more companies.
And we need more companies.
How do you get them in, say, to gas or to oil?
We've got 2 new smaller companies in the marketplace. We want more competition, and the other thing we should do is we should encourage consumers to switch away from companies when they put their prices up. So we've seen a price rise today. Everybody who's not happy with that price rise should switch. There are a number of tariffs on the market.
Do you really believe that those other companies will keep their tariffs low once they've sucked in all the people who've switched?
Well, I was actually looking today at some of the tariffs available. There are some fixed rates available by other companies, which if you switch into them, you're not going to be hit, and I think people should switch away from companies that put the price.
And what about giving up some of this green stuff?
And we need more
costs over 11% on people's bills.
I think what we need to do.
Want to go through that and say we could cross some of this off?
Well, what we need to do is we need to move away from a dependence on imported gas. We need a mix of energy supplies. We need some more nuclear. We need renewable energy. We need some gas. And we need some coal. Actually, being completely dependent on imported energy means we're very dependent on the world global gas price. And Ed Miliband's admitted that if global gas prices go up, he wouldn't be able to deliver his price freeze, which is why the Prime Minister said it was a price con.
But the second biggest buyer of gas in the UK is Deutsche Bank. Now, I don't know how much gas Deutsche Bank uses, but I imagine it's very, very little. So what you have there is a market where they are racking up prices. And I represent a part of the country which uses gas a great deal for its kilns, for potteries in Stoke-on-Trent. And our businesses are being absolutely hammered by not being able to get competitive gas rates because the government's not investing in gas storage.
All right, let's hear from... Hold on, I'll come to you, but let's just hear from some members of our audience. You in the very front here, then I come to the lady up there in the back. You.
Is it fair to say that privatisation of the energy companies hasn't worked and that the only way to bring down the prices is to renationalise them?
Is that your view? Let's just hold on to that. And in the third row from the back.
I just wonder how many of the CEOs of these big fuel companies worry about paying their fuel bills each time they come through the door.
And the man in the blue shirt, you sir.
I'm afraid Peter Oborne was probably right. When the Labour Party was last in, they allowed the producers to merge with the distributors, which has distorted the market. They installed a whole set of green energy policies, which are taking an ever-increasing proportion of the bills. And a lot of the investment in infrastructure is to tie in windmills and other uneconomic energy sources.
But do you think the government can stand up to the energy companies, which was the question?
I don't think they should stand up to the energy companies. They should get out of the way of the energy companies and stop putting on extra taxes and inefficient energy, and forcing us to use inefficient energy sources.
Okay. Diane James.
Well, thank you for all your comments, ladies and gentlemen. I'm listening to this argument and just thinking I've got Ed Miliband and David Cameron completely out of touch with what's going on out there. You've got one political party leader saying fixed prices. Well, you can do that. That's already been found. There's fixed rates out there. And you've got another one suggesting that suddenly there's going to be this magical new company who's going to be completely immune to what's happening with the market out there and is suddenly going to make price of energy massively cheaper. This blame culture, it worries me a little bit. You know, we've had bash the bankers, we're, bashing the next sector in the economy. When it comes down to it, if we took out this huge element of the EU obligations in terms of energy, the reliance that we've now got on imported gas to make up for the fact we've closed so many coal-fired power stations, we've taken away an indigenous power source that we had here, and we're now saying we're going to go for fracking, which I agree with Peter on, I would do, because that's a UKIP policy. But, that's going to take at least 10 years before it comes on stream to such an extent that will make up for the deficit we're in.
So it's the EU's fault, according to UKIP, not surprisingly.
It's one element of the fault.
Everything's the EU's fault.
You might well think so, Mark, but when it comes down to it, we've got this emphasis on the renewable sector that's meant to suddenly, like a white charger, come into the energy market.
So you take out that 11% or so that's spent on all different kinds
absolutely, and the gentleman made the point in terms of inefficient wind turbines, for instance.
What about home improvements? which cost pretty nearly half for the bill.
What was it, 12 households have taken up the Green Deal? 12 households? I mean, you know...
It adds £47 to the fuel bill, even though nobody
what a
uses
waste
it,
of money, everybody. What a waste of money.
OK, more people with their hands up, and Bonnie, I'll come to you in a second. Yes, the woman in the front. There in green. Yes, you in green.
We've seen this increase in the energy prices coming in, and it's the start of more to come. We've also seen an increase in the use of food banks. Does this mean we're now going to have to see winter coats, blankets, candles, as well as food at the food banks?
OK, Bonnie Greer. Don't dwell too heavily on the food bank side, because we might come to that later. Anyway.
OK. I don't have a sort of strong, long, comprehensive answer about fracking and all of this. I'm opposed to fracking, by the way, but I don't have a long answer about it. The original question is this government too weak to face up to the energy companies? No, it's not weakness. It's a matter of priorities. This government is interested in Britain PLC. It wants to shrink the state, and it wants to make us actually stand up and be grown-ups and handle it while they reshape the country. So I don't think it's a matter of that. I think it's frankly a matter to see how long we can take it and if we can take it. So I don't think that we're going to see them stand up to these companies because they don't attack the financial sector. They're much more interested in doing it to us.
Sorry, hold on a second. See how long we can take what?
Well, see how long we can actually, as this lady was saying, you know, be cold, to be honest with you. The idea and the reality is that this government is more interested in big business, in helping business, in appearing to be the friend of business, and not necessarily on the side of the consumer or the population.
Okay. You, sir, in the third row.
The problem with capitalism in this instance is that there's no competition. So who do you switch to?
Yeah, I mean, what's the government's answer to that?
Well, we want to get more competition into the market. One of the problems, as I said, we inherited
wanting to is like a sort of...
No, so we need to do things to make it easier. Part of the reason why we want to get people switched to the lowest tariff, for example, and to encourage people to switch is so that you do get more competition, that smaller new entrants will come into the marketplace. We inherited a market which only had the big six. It used to have, when we left power, there were 14 energy companies that people could choose from. You had more competition. You had more options for people to switch to. That's what we need to get back to, so people actually have some real choice, and customers will face pressure in the market.
There's a stage in the political cycle at which you can't keep blaming previous governments, and after 3.5 years in power, not taking any effective action in this realm, and now we're seeing the consequences of this. And it's part of a pattern of behaviour. When we look at the Prime Minister, he is incapable of standing up against the strong. When it comes to the banks, when it comes to the Murdoch press, David Cameron is always on the wrong side. And so it is with the energy companies. He's not on the side of the consumers facing these 10% hikes. He is on the side of the big six energy companies, and small businesses and consumers are taking the hit for it.
Absolutely.
I think we live in this illusion that we live in an open and transparent energy market, and it's simply not the case. The amount of subsidies, the amount of tax breaks and backroom lobbying that happens and influence on those energy companies. So now we have a discussion about fracking. The only reason we're discussing fracking is because of lobbyists exerting power. It will not bring down energy prices. It's locking us onto a fossil fuel future, which we don't need. And this is only weeks after the IPCC report saying we need to move away from fossil fuels. This is a path which is going to lead us towards greater fuel poverty. In the winter, people will die. And we have this political wrangling about fracking, which has been forced upon us by big companies that are feeding us alive, and people will die.
Tristram, when you make your attack on the government, how do you account for us having very low fuel prices relative to the rest of Europe?
What I know about the prices is that when Ed Miliband was Energy Secretary, prices came down by £100, and since David Cameron has been Prime Minister, they've gone up up by £300. We live in a global market, that's absolutely right, and everything the Minister said about buying in too much foreign gas is absolutely right. But I don't accept this idea that we have competitive energy rates relative to Europe. You look, for example, at what's happening for German energy rates, particularly in their industrial sector. They have vast hidden subsidies, to go back to the gentleman's point, which allows their businesses to compete.
OK, the man there, and then I'll come to you, Peter.
Isn't it just easy? The world demand is growing. China, India, whatever caps you want to put in place, a few more companies, it's a short-term fix. Surely we need to become independent. We need to find alternatives. We need a mix of energies.
And we need...
Hold on, Peter, okay.
Actually, I'm glad you just said that, because what I was about to say myself, that the argument we've just been having about sort of more competition or energy prices exploiting us isn't really true, and I think that Mr Hunt knows it's not really true. We have got to look at the fundamental structural issues. One of them is much more fracking, nuclear power. We need much more nuclear power, more wind power possibly. The Severn Bore would be incredible.
Yep.
And there is a problem. The problem is democracy. You have, at the local level, no politician can defy his voters by saying, let's have fracking here in Sussex or in Hampshire or in Berkshire, because they're not going to do it. And then they're going to get the same problem with nuclear power. And we have got to understand that there are certain issues where democracy is an absolute impediment. And so instead of listening to sort of whinging from left-wing politicians about the cartels which don't actually exist, well, let's have a bit of long-term thought, please, Mr. Hunt.
Well, I'll tell you exactly.
Yeah.
In Stoke-on-Trent, we've got huge amounts of coal bed methane, and we are going to exploit it to the full, which is exactly the kind of long-term energy strategy we need.
All right. Last quick word, if you would.
Just very briefly, on the nuclear power, I don't actually agree with that. I've got opposite my constituency, the other side of the river, we've got an existing nuclear power station. And actually, when you confront people with some of these choices, they can see you need to make more investment. Hopefully, there's going to be some new investment, a new nuclear power station there. We do need more investment. The Chancellor's made some very positive announcements today while he's been in China about new investment into the energy market. That's what we need so that we've got a more diverse set of energy supplies for the country.
Join in this debate. Twitter, text, our hashtag you probably know, BBCQT. You can follow us at BBC Question Time. If you want to text 83981, and the red button will tell you what others are texting. We must go swiftly on to another question. This from Aaron Dewey, please.
Can the UK cope with any more immigration after Christmas?
Can the UK cope with any more immigration after Christmas? Diane James, UKIP has strong views on immigration.
We do indeed, and thank you for your question. I don't believe we can. It's as simple as that. We've got no idea, I'm sure everyone will agree, exactly how many people are going to come from the two countries in question, where the current restrictions on them coming into the UK...
Bulgaria and Romania, you're talking about.
I'm talking about Romania and Bulgaria. But what we do know, for instance, is that there's 2 million of them in Spain. They've already made that move. The likelihood, therefore, of them coming to the UK is pretty high. We also know that the government will not admit what sort of forecast they have. And then we've got this latest EU Commissioner report and this whole issue of over 600,000 inactive EU migrants here already, 73% increase in the number that hadn't got a job. And what that does mean, if we translate that, and I think we can translate that, I'm not going to detract from that, there is going to be a pressure when these two countries, their restrictions are lifted and those people are going to come here. And they are going to come here. It's a very, very nice deal coming to the UK in terms of access to benefits. And I'm sure Mark is going to try and come back on me and say, well, we've got this under control. The coalition, the Conservatives, haven't got it under control.
Well, what would you have a government do that was within the law of the EU of which we're members until UKIP gets its way?
I wouldn't be messing about with this discussion of repatriation of powers. It would just be a straightforward, no, they cannot come in, and the way to achieve that is out of the EU. It's as simple as that.
Mark Harper.
Well, I think it's worth just getting some facts out there. I mean, it's worth reminding people that of the immigration into the country, only over half of it is from outside the EU. Only about a third of the immigration into Britain is from the EU. And even when Labour was in power and by its own admission let European immigration get out of control, it was still the case that twice as much immigration was from outside the EU. So the idea that this is all about the EU and there's nothing we can do, which is UKIP's contention, is nonsense. The government's reduced net migration by a third since we've come to power.
Mark, you know that's rubbish.
No, that is absolutely true.
It's not,
Diane.
because you can't count them in and you can't count them out.
Those are robust figures that the Independent Office for National Statistics put together. It's down by a third, but we've got more skilled workers coming to Britain, we've got more students coming to Britain, and the most important thing is, unlike when Labour was in power, the growth in employment we've seen in Britain, so there's 1 million more people in employment, the bulk of that benefit has now gone to British people, which is not the case when Labour was in power.
And what about after Christmas? What about after Christmas, which was the question?
Well, we've been quite straightforward.
Which is a European question, since it's Bulgaria and Romania.
No, it is. We've been quite straightforward. We don't have any secret forecasts. We've been quite honest. There are 8 other European countries who have transitional controls who'll be removing them at the end of the year. So it's not like 2004, when we were the only country that let people come to Britain when the Eastern European countries joined. 8 other European countries. Clearly some people will come here. We'll have to see what happens, but they can go to 8 other European countries, and we haven't made a forecast. There are no secret
You're not
forecasts.
made a forecast?
No, we haven't, because...
Why haven't you made a forecast?
Because our experts have advised us, have said that trying to make a forecast when you've got 8 other countries...
There's a country you can go and talk to people. You can do survey.
Well,
you survey public opinion in this country every 5 minutes of the day, both parties. You alter your policies to fit every little tiny change, and you're saying you can't go to many Bulgarian and ask people what their plans are.
All the survey work that's been done...
Your leader went to Romania and tried to ask them whether they wanted to...
And most of the people that Nigel Farage talked to said they didn't want to come to Britain at all. Thanks very much.
Sorry for the Chinese to come, Mark.
If they're coming here to study, and if they're coming here to invest and come to visit and spend money in our shops, absolutely.
They're coming to visit?
Absolutely. We've got over 200,000 Chinese people come to visit Britain. They spend money in our shops. They invest money in our businesses.
We're talking about immigration, not Chinese visitors. So,
no.
Bonnie Greer. I know. Bonnie Greer.
No, listen, I'm not a politician. I'm not going to sit here and throw a whole lot of figures around at you. I'm just sick and tired of this conversation. I'm sick and tired every year, every government talking about immigration. What we don't want to happen, and I think that what this government has done, is allowed a vigorous, necessary discussion in a thriving democracy to descend in a xenophobia. It is beneath the British people to do that. It is beneath this democracy. Let's have a sane, reasonable discussion. We are not going to have on January 1st Bulgarians and Romanians coming over with their covered wagons and their horses and their children and thieves and robbers. That's not going to happen. We have to be very careful. We have to be very careful in talking about this and make sure that we don't appear to be a replica of the National Front in France. It's very, very important. And so don't go to xenophobia. Calm down and let's talk about this reasonably.
Lisa.
Yes, I'm a district councillor in the neighbouring borough, which is Hart District Council, and one of our biggest issues is the development of all the houses that have to put in. We just had our local plan thrown away by the government because they're saying we factored in a zero net migration number, and they've said absolutely not. That's not the case. You have to develop more houses. We're talking about 3,500 houses in Hart District Council over the next 15 years. Yeah. Now the government practically wants us to double that. Where are we going to put 7,000 new houses in Hart District Council? How are we going to have the bandwidth in our schools and our hospitals and so on and so forth to accommodate all of those people?
Yeah. All right. Tristram Hunt, you say can you pick up his exact point?
I don't know what the government is proposing for you as an elected councillor in terms of how you're going to manage the migration. My concern is what this government is not doing is learning the lessons of our time in government when the Labour Party was in government, and we didn't have the correct numbers for the number of EU nationals coming into work. The figures we were given by civil servants were wildly off. We didn't drill down into the data effectively, and as a result, our public policy wasn't in the right place. We believed the official figures we were given, and they proved wildly off. So I'm hoping Mark Harper is drilling into this with sort of fracking-like vigour in terms of some of these statistics. But look, we should always...
hang on, what good will it do if he finds out that the gentleman from Hart is correct and he's got to build 7,000 instead of 3,500 homes?
Because you've got to plan. Because let us not underestimate the importance of free movement of labour across the European Union. Your children will want to work in France or Spain. You might want to retire in France or Spain. You might have business connections in Italy. The free movement of labour is an important part of the European Union, and we have grown in prosperity as a result of it. So yes, we've got to manage the transitions well, but let's not lose sight of the importance of where we are within the European Union.
Peter Oborne.
I agree with Mr. Hunt that free movement of labour is a wonderful thing, but the problem with the European Union is it's gone forward too fast, just as it went much too fast towards the euro, which is causing utter destruction in southern Europe. It's moving too fast on this freedom of labour. Let's give you one fact, which is absolutely central to this whole argument, and that is that the average wage in Bulgaria and Romania is approximately half the minimum wage in Britain. And so this is why last time when Labour got it wrong, we had Polish professors coming along to be cleaners in Britain. And it does have, I'm afraid, I thought the Chancellor up there described it absolutely beautiful, a massive effect on public services, schools, housing, all of these things. I reckon that Europe itself needs to admit that it's made a frightful nonsense. It's going to be the same problem in Germany and in France. I think it's time to look again. I think you have time to look again and say to Bulgaria and Romania that it's not a good idea at the moment to go ahead with this. And actually, let's, for the sake of Europe and for the sake of Bulgaria and Romania, which doesn't want to lose their best people, let's just put it on hold for a few years.
OK. You sit at the back there.
The Tory elite in this area have got it totally wrong. In my town, we're close to waiting 21 days for a doctor's appointment. In my county, they're about to pull down 4 care homes. Those care homes are the family silver. They love, they look after, they manage our elderly well. We're going to pull them down and we're going to put it out to privatisation. We are so out of touch in this area, it's unbelievable.
Hold on, let's finish the point.
They have completely lost control of what is happening at a local level. The cuts have gone far too far. It's time to start rebuilding the fabric of our society rather than the Tory way of destroying it.
And can I How is that relevant to immigration from Bulgaria and
Quite
Romania?
quite simple. We cannot take any more. Our county cannot absorb any more. We are full. We're going to close to business pretty soon.
Well, there's 2 things. First of all, back to what I said before, which is we recognise some of the pressures on public services, housing the gentleman from Hart District Council made on immigration, which is why we've reduced it by a third. We're going to continue to reduce it from the uncontrolled levels that we had under Labour.
Reduced which immigration?
Net immigration to the country. As I said, most immigration is from outside the European Union. This is the thing that...
They're the people you send vans around saying, go home if you're illegal.
For people if you're illegal, I don't see any problem. We're saying to people who have no right to be in the United Kingdom that they shouldn't be here anymore.
Picking that
gentleman's point up at the back
do you still, just since you made the point, are you here illegally, go home or risk arrest? You still support that? You'd like to see more of it?
It was a pilot. We're assessing the results at the moment. If the pilot shows that we were successful in persuading people to leave the country...
How many hits do you have to give?
No, I'm not going to give a running commentary. We're going to publish the results when we've done the evaluation. If it's successful, we'll look at rolling it out. If it's not successful, we won't. I don't want to spend £15,000 of taxpayers' money removing every single individual. I want to people that have no right to be here should leave the country, and that's what we want to do. The immigration bill, which we published, we'll be debating next week, is about making it welcoming people to the country who contribute and deterring those that don't.
And
I think that's the balance that
holding those views,
right.
holding those views, you're not alarmed at the open door policy on both Bulgaria and Romania.
Well, we haven't got an open door.
Well, you have got an open door.
No, we haven't.
Who's not allowed in?
Other people come here to work.
So who isn't allowed in?
Well, we've tightened up...
In January the 1st.
We've tightened up the access to benefits. We've tightened up the access to services and access, for example, to social housing. So local councils, for example, can prioritise access to social housing.
So you make it undesirable to come here, is what
and
you're
if
saying.
they come here to work and contribute and pay taxes and make a contribution, I have no problem with that, but we want to make sure people don't abuse free movement. Tristram was right. Free movement is OK. Abuse of free movement isn't. And we've been working very hard with European partners to make sure there isn't.
This is one of the examples of why we don't trust politics or politicians anymore. You know, and I'm not saying that to get, I'm not saying it to get applause or anything. I'm sitting listening to Mark and to Tristram. I'm sure, you know, really nice guys. But basically, Labour didn't get the numbers right. They admitted. I mean, what are they hired for if they didn't get the numbers right? And now Mark is saying something about doing a pilot with a white van to see, you know, this is not what we expect. We expect our politicians to get it right, to prepare us for whatever is going to happen, and not to start some kind of dog whistle xenophobic rant about people coming in and out of the country, because at the end of the day, we pay for it no matter what the deal.
But, Bonnie, it's not a xenophobic rant. It's not.
Listen, no, not from you, and not from you, but it descends to that level.
Why are you accusing these two men of a xenophobic rant, but not
I didn't
Jay?
say they were xenophobic. Sorry, I didn't say they were making a xenophobic rant. They did...
Xenophobia, you said.
No, no, pardon?
So Bonnie is right. She's not accusing those men of being xenophobic.
I'm not xenophobic.
She's saying there is an air of
not.
xenophobia,
All right.
and she's right. She's not pointing the finger.
OK.
Thank you.
Right, hold on. I'm going to come to Diane in a moment. Let me go to this man in the front here.
The discussion has nothing to do with xenophobia. It's all about jobs, services. And we still have large amounts of youth unemployment in this country. How is more immigration? What effect is that going to have on that?
I think...
Hold on. And the man in the chair. Yes, you in the...
I agree there is a really nasty xenophobic wing of this argument. For example, the go-home vans, they're just horrible. But we have a housing crisis. Like, it was on the news last night, thousands of people are living in bed and breakfast with their families. Like, thousands of people are going to come to this country, and where are they going to stay? There's nowhere for them to stay. And it is easy to say it's xenophobic, which a horrible amount of it is, but behind there is a logistical argument.
I don't disagree with that. Please,
Okay,
I'm not calling it xenophobic.
Let
I'm
me
saying
go
the
to the
air of
questioner up
xenophobic.
there at the back, and then I come to you.
I really feel for our young people. Well done.
Diane James, brief point.
Yes, despite what Mark would like to convince us, the Conservatives and the Coalition are not controlling immigration. And I'm a fellow borough councillor, by the way, so I empathise and sympathise with you completely. The comment has been made that even with the current national housing targets, we would have to build one new home every 7 minutes. And if we don't control immigration, when we get to the end of the next 15-year programme that the coalition government has introduced, we're going to have to embark on another huge round of house building. Now, we've got to start saying enough is enough at some stage and bring control back into this country as to where the infrastructure goes, where the housing goes, where it's allocated, and that is not happening with Mark and his team in government at the moment. I don't know whether you've seen the same issues and the papers that have come out. Allocating the housing as it is, you can drive a coach and horses through it. It's an absolute nonsense.
OK, I'm going to take one more point, because the man in the centre, in the third row down, has had his hand up ever since this discussion began.
Peter has highlighted the concerns with immigration from the new year, and he's highlighted them quite correctly. Whereas Bonnie has talked about the wagon train scenario. I think it's going to be worse than the wagon train scenario, and I have a major concern about the social structure in this country and what it's going to do to our English society. Having seen it already happen throughout Europe, in Austria, in Switzerland, with people coming in from the two countries mentioned and causing major issues there, and I think it's going to be 10 times worse over here.
All right. Thank you very much for that comment. Now, I'm going to move on. A question from Philippa Messenger, please. Philippa Messenger.
Should I still believe my mother's advice that you can always trust a police officer?
Well, this is in the light, of course, of what Deborah Glass, the Deputy Chairwoman of the Independent Police Complaints Commission, said in this whole business over the Andrew Mitchell, what he did and didn't say at the gates of Downing Street. And you remember, I don't want to go through the whole story because I'm sure you know it well, but 3 police officers went to see him to see if they could sort the thing out, and then gave a description of what he'd said. He had tape recorded it, and the 3 officers gave a completely different view. And the Independent Police Complaints Commission said that, in her opinion, the surrounding circumstances do give an indication of an issue of honesty and integrity and discreditable conduct, not merely naive or poor professional judgment. There's more to go, of course, on this, because they still haven't decided whether to prosecute other people involved. But let's just deal with this issue and what was said, and let's not deal with it for too long. But should Philippa Messenger trust a police officer? Tristram Hunt.
Oh, it's desperately depressing. I found the week's events. Look, we've had 2 significant events this week in terms of police trustworthiness. We're looking at the Mark Duggan inquest, which led to the riots and the accounts of what happened there. And then we've had this report from the IPCC about what the police officers did or didn't say in that meeting. One's instinctive sense, and quite rightful sense, is always to trust a police officer, but it does enormous amounts of damage to their integrity, this situation. And the real issue is that if they could do this to a cabinet minister, could they do this to a young lad from Bradford or Brixton? If they're able to work together like this, arguably to undermine a democratically elected political representative, what hope does a young boy or girl have in the criminal justice system? And that's the real fear. So, you know, I feel a lot of angst about it.
Peter Oborne.
Yeah, today I wrote a letter to Andrew Mitchell, just a personal note of apology. Because I believed the police. I believed it was right that he should be removed from the government. And, of course, we now know that the police lied. These 3 officers lied. And let's just bear something else in mind. There's going to be no punishment to these officers who lied. And just think, they're all going to go into the court. They're empowered to arrest people, to give evidence against people. These officers who lied, they're going to expect to be listened to with respect by the jury. And yet the police seems to be completely relaxed about something. Look, this is not just about Mr. Mitchell. In fact, Mr. Mitchell had powerful friends, influential people who came to his aid and made sure this came out into the open. I absolutely agree with Dr. Hunt, actually, aren't you? I think, sorry, not Mr. I absolutely agree with Dr. Hunt that the real issue is this same thing is happening in working class estates, young youths, they're being framed, and for them, that's the end of their life, because they're going to jail. They've been framed, and they're going to... Mr. Mitchell, it was a career setback. These youths, they've got a criminal record, they're not going to be employed.
I think it's fair to say that these 3 officers have made no comment since, and the chief constables who decided not to discipline them have asked to go before a parliamentary committee to explain why. So there may be... I mean, there are 2 stories.
And Andrew Mitchell still has not made an official complaint. Let's put this all into context. I mean, I'd like to see a statement from him. I mean, to go back to your question very quickly, I think our element of trust has been severely undermined. And, you know, the next time, I hope it isn't stopped for speeding points or something like that, but, you know, if I'm going to be questioning, am I going to get a rightful hearing? But what worries me more than anything is what was effectively a relatively simple spat that involved rather colourful language, if we look at this, has suddenly developed into something much more serious. And the seriousness of it is this the police fighting against the cutbacks and using this as ammunition, or is it just the usual cover-up type scenario? And that's what worries me more than anything. Are we just watching this battle being fought out over something very, very fundamental? And as you say, recognising your question, undermining our trust in the police.
The Independent Police Complaints Commission did say, of course, that they were running a successful, I quoted, high-profile anti-cuts media campaign.
Absolutely.
Do you think Andrew Mitchell should be reinstated now?
Well, let me answer Philippa's question first, and then I'll come to that.
Don't forget my question.
No, I won't. But she's in the audience, so she gets to go first. I think the important thing to remember is this. I think generally the vast majority of police officers behave with honesty and integrity, and we often ask them to put their lives on the line. I mean, this evening, for example, as people are watching this, the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary at the Police Bravery Awards, honouring police officers who've put themselves in danger. But I think Tristram's right. This type of behaviour does cause real damage to the image of the police, which is why I think those chief constables ought to deal with it. Listening to what the IPCC have said, I think they ought to have a disciplinary process so they can tease out what actually happened, and if those officers have behaved badly, they need to be dealt with. And it's why we put our reforms in place with the College of Policing. We're strengthening the IPCC. We want to change the culture in the police to make it more open and to make these sorts of things less likely to happen. So I think the answer to your question is you should trust the police, but I think we need to take action to make sure this type of behaviour doesn't happen. And I think Tristram's point was right. Andrew Mitchell was a person who looks like he's been wronged, but was in a position where he was able to do something about it. The concern is, for people watching this, is for someone without that ability to do something about it, how many other people are going to suffer? And that's why I think we need to take action to improve the integrity of the police force overall.
You heard what your
question.
Yeah, you heard what the Home Secretary said.
I did.
In the House of Commons. You know that David Cameron sacked him. Didn't Prime Minister should apologise?
Well, he didn't sack him. Andrew Mitchell...
he was there one day and gone the next.
Andrew Mitchell, in the job that he was doing as Chief Whip, depended on the confidence of the parliamentary party. And he himself said, given all of these allegations, that he wasn't able to do the job.
No pressure, then.
So I hope this situation is resolved. I can't comment on the original events because they're still the subject of the police investigation and the CPS.
You want to see Andrew Mitchell back in office?
Well, that's a matter for the Prime Minister. It's looking increasingly like... certainly, as what happened in his own constituency, he was wronged. I don't know what happened in the original set of circumstances. And clearly, if he's completely cleared, then the Prime Minister, it would be free to the Prime Minister to ask him back into government.
Greer. To go back to your question, there are many communities in this country who would never even ask that question in the first place because they don't trust the police. So they haven't lost anything, to be honest with you. The second thing is, it's interesting to me, he's the only immigrant on this panel, I think, to say that I come from a country and a part of the country where you don't have police walking around unarmed. That is probably in the whole world. British policing is unique. It's called a police service. Therefore, our police do their work in conjunction with the consent of the people. And if they break that trust in any way, they need to be accountable for it. And it's as simple as that. Okay. And if it takes a conservative whip to actually bring this to the fore and make the Home Secretary ask for an apology or whatever, so be it. And if these police officers have actually done something or done wrong, they need to go down. And it's as simple as that.
Okay. I agree. Just before we... have we any police officers in the audience who want to say anything? Are you a police? No. No? No. No, just waiting. OK. All right. Well, I'll go to the man up there on the right. You, sir. Yeah. On the far right at the back.
I was wondering if the lady's mother is still alive and whether she heard the PM programme last night, because there was a retired Deputy Assistant Commissioner from the Met who advised people to record their encounters with the police. And I think it's a sad state of affairs.
And Philippa Messenger, do you still believe your mother's advice after all the things you've heard?
I like Bonnie's point, really, about the fact that we need to... It's hopefully a small minority that are causing problems. I'd like to continue to believe my mother's advice and follow it, just because I think it's a bit depressing otherwise if I don't.
The trouble with a small minority is you never know who's a member of that minority in advance, do you?
Yeah.
OK, let's go on to another question, I think. I take one from Bruce Melstrom, please. Bruce Melstrom.
Should teachers' pay be performance-related?
Should teachers' pay be performance-related? And we've had these strikes in several parts of Britain today over that's one of the issues. You're the new man on the block on education. Don't tell us everything you know about it, but what on this particular point?
I'm in favour of performance-related pay. We had a great report come out today by Alan Milburn on social mobility, and the chapters in there on education are totally compelling. And the difference which a good teacher and a great teacher can make to the life chances, particularly of children from deprived communities, is absolutely stunning. And conversely, the difference which a bad teacher can make to kids from low-income communities is devastating. So we want to reward excellence in the classroom, but we also want to create new pathways for teachers, because at the moment great teachers get sucked up into senior management, they become heads, they become deputy heads, they become super heads. What I think we need is a pathway for teachers where you can excel in the classroom, where you have a career, which means that your love of teaching and your love of imparting learning gives you a pathway as a teaching career. So I'm in favour of I'm in favour of performance-related pay. I'm in favour of making sure we don't have bad teachers in schools. But what I'm really in favour of is continuing professional development of teachers, so we get the kind of quality, best quality teachers in the world. We've got brilliant teachers out there at the moment, but we can do more.
Peter Oborne.
Oh, I think it's fantastic that we should have performance-related pay. I absolutely agree with every single word by Dr. Hunt. And what I'm hoping is that the important thing about him is that he's just been made education spokesman. And he seems to agree with the wonderful things which Michael Gove is doing. And it's marvellous. The free schools, the academy schools,
not what he said this
high
morning.
standards. I know he does change his mind a little bit, but I think that the virtuous side of his character will win out.
I take the good bits and get rid of the sort of crazy ideological
But you mentioned free schools. Are you in favour of free schools or not in favour of free schools?
We're in favour of keeping good free schools, and we're in favour of parent-led academies where you have qualified teachers rather than the chaos you've got at Almadina.
Why did you call them vanity projects for yummy mummies?
That's what they are.
And maybe you'd enlighten us what a yummy mummy is.
It is the female version of a faddy daddy.
What's a faddy daddy? I have no idea.
It's the male version of a yummy mummy.
We're getting over that. So was that a stupid thing to say now that you're here? You say you're in favour of free schools?
No, it was a stupid thing to say because I think
you're honest about that.
I think all parents should be involved with the schools of their children, and as many parents involved in the education of their children is wonderful. So be they yummy mummies, faddy daddies, grandparents, all the rest of it.
But just to go back, and we need therefore local bureaucracy not involved of local schools.
Well, yes and no, Peter.
OK, Mark Harper.
Well, yes, I agree with introducing performance-related pay. I want to give head teachers...
You see a Damascene conversion here, am I right?
Let me answer the gentleman's question, then I'll talk about Tristram.
You're very controlling tonight.
No. I just want to answer the audience's questions first. It's their show, not ours. In answer to performance-related pay, yes, I agree.
Toady, he says you are.
I agree with performance-related pay. I think head teachers should have the ability to reward good teachers and you know, give them the rewards in the classroom when they're performing. So I agree with that. I think it's disappointing today that we've seen strikes across a large chunk of the country. I think it's inconvenienced parents and it's damaged the education of children. So I think that's a retrograde step. On the issue about free schools, I think free schools and academies are a great thing. Tristram's all over the place on this. At the weekend, he was trying to pretend that he was now in favour of free schools.
Good ones,
and changed his previous approach. He was very scathing about them this morning in the House of Commons. The fact is, the free schools that we've set up already, 3/4 of them are either good or outstanding. And I want to make sure that all parts of the country, we have the ability for people to set up new schools, for those schools to be successful. And where he's right is that I want people who come from working class backgrounds, who went to state schools like I did, to have the same opportunities for having an excellent education that people who went to private schools like Tristram
There was the issue of the Almedina School in Derby, which was actually what led to that. Hold on, no, let's not anything. We'll hear from the lady there on the right.
Specifically to the pay related to, like, attainment, obviously this is going to be judged by the improvement of students in the class. So I was actually with teachers yesterday when I was told I was going to be coming here at teachers' graduation. The allegation they made, they wanted me to put forward to you, is do you think this is going to be detrimental to the lower attaining students? Because who's going to make the most improvement realistically? The people at the top of the class already. So what's going to happen to those people that are already at the bottom of the class? They're going to be harder to make improvements. So people are going to
Thank you. I've been a teacher in this country. I don't know if anybody else on this panel has been. And I want to have you, sorry.
He teaches.
Tristram. And,
I'm qualified, though.
Pardon? We haven't done it. Performance-related pay for a teacher, they're not performing seals or dogs. How do you measure how good a teacher is? How do you do that? Do you do that? Let me finish, because I only got a second. Do you do that by seeing how many A's comes out of your class? Do you do that by how clean the kids are? Do you do that by how quiet they are? How do you do it? Teaching is one of the highest jobs any civilized society can have. We need to make teaching again honorable. We need to make it an important vocation. It's not just a job, it's a vocation. And this Education Secretary has made it a position for chumps. And how horrible is that when you think that at the end of the day, our children 8-9 hours of the day are in the hands of people who are going to shape them as human beings. Have some respect for teachers, please.
Okay, I'll come back to you both. The woman there, three in the back row. There.
Looking at the other side of the spectrum, looking at the students, my son, there's a guy in my son's class who's just finished secondary school. He got all A++s for his exams, and he comes from a working class background. I'm not sure if the family are actually on benefits. He passed all the exams and qualifications to get into private school, but was turned down because he couldn't have funding to go to that private school. Now, I thought the government was going to do something about that to reward the lower classes if they made the grades.
All right, that's a slightly different issue, but maybe they've been picked up here. But Diane James, I haven't brought you in yet on this issue of, let's go back to the original issue of performance-related pay for teachers. And you've heard the attack from Germaine.
Yes.
Germaine, you always do that.
I only ever do it once.
Jonathan, you always do that.
I only ever do it once.
You always do that, Jonathan.
I only ever do it once.
I don't actually see the need for performance-related pay. And, you know, that's my straight answer on this, because the minute we start putting targets in place, the minute we start engineering abuse of those targets. And we've already seen a situation where employers have lost confidence in exam results, no matter how well the children think they've done and how proud the parents might be. We've seen teachers already manipulating results, you know, focusing on certain students that are at the lower end to push them up into a different category. So the minute we start social engineering on that scale in the teaching profession, I think, is the wrong way to go.
Okay.
We've got a very, very clear message out there, which is, at the moment, is that there's been too much political interference in the education system. You've only got to look at countries like Singapore, which has maintained its system unchanged for years. It's held up as being, you know, a top model in terms of student quality output and this sort of thing. And, you know, Michael Gove, to give him some credit, he's going back to some fundamentals, which is a good, solid syllabus, focus on, if you like, the 3 R's, all this sort of thing. And that's what's needed if we're going to prepare our young people in a global and a very demanding world. Simple as that.
Jermaine Greer said there was no way.
Or even Bonnie.
Or even Bonnie.
I just call him Jonathan, and he's coughing too. Okay, cover it. That's okay. She's a friend of mine. That's all right. She's a bit taller than I am.
She's a friend. No, hold on. The issue of whether you can actually measure performance in teachers, which is what this is about.
Yeah. I mean,
you say you're in favour of it.
Because we've got it. We've got systems of performance-related pay already. And the industrial action today is a sort of almost a slightly narrow question about the degree to which you judge it. But to go back to the lady's point, I'll go to her point first, which is that how do you measure progression, particularly for low-attaining kids? And what we've had is a reform this week from the government, which we are broadly in support of, whereby you get rid of the A star to C tyranny, which just supported, in a sense, you know, often coasting schools in wealthier areas. I know,
come to the point. We've only got a few minutes left.
Is it complicated?
Are you saying that you can measure the teachers
and that's
by the results?
She says you can't.
Absolutely.
What is the difference between you and the Conservatives? If you are actually going to turn out to be them, Mark II, what's the point?
Because we believe.
I'm sorry, what's the point?
We believe in improving teacher quality, and we have a government here which believes in de-skilling teacher quality. We believe in
you haven't answered how you measure it.
We believe in having qualified teachers.
Tristram?
Of course, you believe in measurement because you can improve young people's life chances from very difficult communities, and it's not acceptable to say
we're talking about the teachers.
Yes, teachers.
And that is how you improve their life chances. And I am concerned with the pupils above all.
You're on the right there.
Well said.
I'm a second-year sixth form student. I've just applied for university, and I'm very aware that this is the third strike relating to teaching in 5 months. It's vital for me to get the same standards of education. Now is not the time for political interference in the teaching sector. We don't need any more. It's done now.
Absolutely.
We need to get a good education across the board.
Have we got any teachers here, just for a last comment, who have a strong view about this? Yes. The woman there on the... You're a teacher?
I've actually just left the school system. I was actually a visiting tutor, a music tutor, so luckily I wasn't affected by this. But I left because I was completely demoralised by the school environment. Teachers in the staff room crying because they're overstressed and they can't deal with it. It's having a knock-on effect on their pupils because they're picking up on the stress levels. And it's just a very depressing state of affairs.
That's different from the issue of whether performance-related pay.
Well,
it
is because teachers are constantly under pressure because of these performance-related...
And the woman behind you is also a teacher.
Yes, I was a special needs teacher, and performance-related pay just doesn't apply to those children.
Exactly.
No,
right, OK. There are so many hands up. I've got to stop because our hour's up. My apologies to Bonnie Greer.
Say it again,
misnaming her.
Say it again. Say it one more
time. Bonnie Greer.
Good.
OK, next week we're going to be in Liverpool, and the week after that we're going to be in St Austell in Cornwall. So if you'd like to come to Liverpool or St Austell, put questions to the panel, argue the toss. Go to our website, the address is on the screen there, or 0330 123 9988 is the number to call. If you've been listening to this on Radio 5 Live, you can continue the debate now on Question Time, Extra Time. My thanks to our panel, to all of you who came here to take part. Apologies to those of you who didn't get in. Grateful to those of you who did. From Basingstoke and Question Time, good night.